And we're rolling! Welcome to Rollin with FD. I'm FD. And today is a great episode. It's kind of a personal episode for me. Well, I'm going to get into more of my past, my background, and we're going to give you a bio of FD and Rollin with FD. We've had people send comments in asking to know more about why I started collecting, when I started collecting. And we got into this conversation a little bit during our time with the personal finance ad in the conversation. If you haven't seen that episode, please check it out. We started talking a little bit about why I started collecting. And today I'm going to go deeper into that. So check out the bio. You might see me more serious than you've ever seen me. That's because really it's hard for me to talk about myself. But because we got the questions about, hey, tell me a little bit more about yourself, I want to know more, we made sure that we delivered this episode. And it's a pleasure to. So check it out. I think you'll find some things interesting. I hope you do. And if you do, leave in the comments what you find interesting about the story that I tell, the evolution of my collecting, and everything in between. Let's get it. Welcome to Rollin with FD. I'm FD. So when we talk about bio, G and I have talked about this for a while. It's been hard for me to think about where to start. And I want this to be genuine, not scripted. None of this is going to be scripted. I'm just going to talk about my life in Chicago growing up, who I am as a person, me being a collector of many different things over time, including sports memorabilia, having the desire to work in radio and also work in entertainment, and now Rollin with FD. So we're here at Sox Stadium, which is the very first place I ever saw a baseball game. We were in a program at school where if you had perfect attendance, you got free tickets to a game, and I never really missed a day of school. So my mom in here came and saw a game of the Sox versus the Angels. We saw Bert Blyleven pitch for the Angels, which was a wonderful experience if anybody knows his career. And if you pan over here, you can see the former Sears Tower, which is the Willis Tower. And it's just good for me to be back here in the place that I grew up. And today we're going to kind of move around a little bit as we tell this story to different sports places in Chicago that kind of significant to me. So let me start by saying, born and raised in Chicago, grew up on the South Side, went to 2 different high schools on the South Side, played sports, and when I say play sports, I threw shot put and discus on the track team. Did fairly well at that, but my primary sport was football, where in high school I played every down position on the line, on the offensive or defensive line. I started gravitating naturally a little bit more to offensive line, and then later in college I played guard, but we'll talk about that. But in high school I was very competitive. I recently sat down since I've been here and talked to a few people that I went to high school and elementary school with, and they described kind of the same person. Early, probably about 7, 8 years old, I became very competitive academically. Wanted to do the best I could, but also wanted to level set myself with other kids in the school. Had friendly competitions with people on tests, quizzes, things like that. It's funny to talk about yourself. Knew early that I think when I went to college, I wanted to be a business major. Kind of knew that early and started working towards that. Now, at the same time that I was preparing to get into high school and take entrance exams and things like that, I was starting to solidify just playing touch football with kids in the neighborhood and at school, just how athletic I was as a bigger guy. So we go out and have recess and play and things like that. It was a competitive time, especially when I was in 6th grade, we would go against the 7th graders. And I was in 7th grade, we would go against the 8th graders. And our class usually won those games. Going into high school, I wanted to make sure that I was playing football, but also thinking about academics. Soon, I was on the National Honor Society, doing things academically on that effort, but also learning the game of football. So as a freshman in football, I was 6'2", 257 pounds. And the coach came and tapped me on the shoulder and said that he wanted me to play varsity football as a freshman. So as a freshman, I played against people that were 17, 18 years old, but I was still learning the game. I had never really played it in an organized manner before. But playing against people that were older than me helped me get experience quickly and develop my game quickly, which took me later on to high school and doing other things where I was in papers in Chicago and playing pretty well by the time I got to my senior year. So the question is, why do I collect stuff? And I'm going to take you through my background of what I've collected and when, and how it has developed over time into who I am now, what I collect now, what is my interest of it now. And some of this, you may hear this and think, was that guy really doing that at that age? But I really was. Always been kind of financially savvy in my head. Really don't even know why or where it came from. So I'm gonna walk you through this. At 7, started collecting stamps and coins. And I've showed G since we've been here some coins and stamps that I still have that I had as a kid. I read an article real young that talked about how those two things were growing in value, and I thought I could kind of replicate that myself. Bought old stamps, ones that I could afford with my allowance back then. Bought old coins, ones that were made out of silver or at a certain condition level. Started getting into mint sets. This stuff is crazy. When I was like 7 to 8 years old, where I would get dollar, silver dollar, things made out of silver, all the way down to a dime, have them in a set, collect that set, keep that set. These things I still have now. But then I saw the 1983 Don Mattingly card in 83 when I was 8 years old. I first saw the top version, and that kind of kicked me off into understanding more about baseball cards. And at that same age, I started watching baseball and football. So that made my interest level get greater and greater and greater. Once I started collecting the top set, I started looking into the Donruss set, and then players started coming out like Jose Canseco, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds was out, and soon King Griffey Jr. was coming a few years later. So these were the new generation of baseball, which got me very interested. I started watching football with my father, my brother at a very early age. Still piqued that interest. So when we started looking at the 85 top set, Jerry Rice's rookie year, these are cards that I started picking up. And cards then, I think a lot of people don't realize, were very affordable. I mean, you could be a kid and have an allowance and pick up a card that now could be worth a whole lot, but back then, you could walk into your 7-Eleven or convenience store, your grocery store, and just buy this stuff and pick it up. So that's what I started doing. But I knew in the back of my mind condition, even back then, was gonna be important for a card. So I started putting cards into sleeves, putting cards into containers so they didn't move around a lot, and the edges didn't get chipped and things like that. So the condition of the card coming out of the wax pack, and it was really a wax pack back then, going into a container was something that I concerned myself with all the time. I would sort out by player, by team, and then store my cards like that. Very different, I think, as a kid. It's just how my mind worked. Really can't even explain it. And so the collection aspect just continuously evolved. By the time I got to probably end of high school, I started thinking about buying more expensive cards. How can I grow my collection? So my freshman year of college, I walk into a card shop in town and I see a Jerry Rice rookie card that's in very good condition. And back then there was no grading. So it's in the thick screw down holders. And I didn't have the card for $600. $600 Jerry Rice rookie card. I didn't have $600. So I talked to the owner of the card shop about let me put that card on layaway. So every few weeks I would come by and pay $40, $30, $50 on the card. It took me almost a year to get that card out of layaway, but I still have that card in my collection. And that was the first card that I saw myself taking a step in what I was collecting, how I was collecting, and what was the total value of the card. So that's how collecting kind of started with me. It's evolved since then. Around the same time that I was collecting cards at 13, 14, 15 years old, I started moving into autographs. And this year we have the National at the Convention Center in Rosemont, but the very first Rosemont show I went to, I saw Willie Stargell at the show and had him sign the Pittsburgh Pirates Rollin jersey with Stargell on the back. Even he as an athlete was shocked at the time. He kept asking me a bunch of questions about where did I get his jersey from. And he signed it and had a great, he was talking to me a whole lot about his career, what I wanted to play when I got further into high school. It was just a great experience. So when I had that good initial experience with them on a large scale like that, after initially the first thing I got signed was the Jose Canseco baseball, it just continued to grow in my mind. What else could I do? And what I loved about autographs is that it allowed me to be very creative. So I could get an autograph, get it signed the way I wanted, get inscriptions that I wanted to get on it, and it was kind of a piece that I made up as I talked to the athlete at the table. That's kind of how collecting started for me. Next, we're going to find ourselves at Wrigley Field. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. So you gotta excuse me out here, it's really hot in Chicago. But we wanted to bring you up here to talk a little bit more about me, but also show you Wrigley Field. Go look around here. And I haven't been up here in years, so a lot of it is brand new to me. But when we had Sox Park, we talked a little bit more about how I started collecting as a child, things like that. And then one point I want to tell people is that when you collect stuff, your life also happens at the same time. So there were points in time that when I first got to college, I was trying to concentrate on grades and football and school, that I pulled back on collecting. Then I went forward again when I graduated from college and actually started working right here in Chicago. At that point, I went pretty hard. I went to the National several times. I went to Chicago Sun-Times newspaper would also have shows at the Convention Center in Rosemont, and I would go there and focus a lot on autographs. Meeting players like Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Pete Rose, Dave Concepcion. There were many players that were just signing and signing and signing repeatedly. They would swap in and out of shows, and I would be there a whole lot. I can remember a time where there was a '85 Chicago Bears reunion show, and I flew back from when I first moved to California to LA to go to that show. So let's walk and talk. You can see some of the scenery. When you talk about autographs, I learned over time some of the things that I went through in the preparation for the national show, some techniques to use. I've used different things over time. Always get up there and talk to the athlete. Don't be afraid to communicate with them, and it usually works out well. Know what kind of pen you want to use. Is it going to be a Sharpie? Is it going to be a paint pen? Test that stuff on the fabric or the leather that you're going to be signing with, and it usually always works out. At least I find. I'd like for you to leave in the comments what things you do at shows when you go. The roar of the crowd. What things you do at shows when you go. It might be something that I can learn and get better at myself. To me, it's all about relationship and talking to people. No different than cards than it is with autographs. So what I want everybody to know is what got me started collecting. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's really my father. My father wanted to collect things when he was young. He lived in Mississippi. Didn't have the funds to. But he did have Willie Mays rookie cards and Hank Aaron cards and Joe DiMaggio cards and things like that. And he would put them in the spokes of his bike to hit a clicking noise, like every kid in America did. But he never thought about what this stuff may be worth. And so when I came along and I started collecting stamps and coins, he started talking to me about baseball cards and football cards. Later that evolved into us having conversations about autographs. And he was the first person that kind of let me know how to communicate with an athlete when I got to the beginning of a table. Oh, look, it's cool, man. So this is one of those things that was not here when I was here before. Look at this. Everybody's like, FD, you behind time. This is cool. I mean, you can actually come up here and watch the game and experience Wrigleyville. So nice. So what were we talking about? Yeah, my father was the person who got me started collecting. He would go to shows with me. He would go to shows with me, walk the show with me, help me talk to the athlete, give me ideas and stuff to talk to them about, tell me about things that happened in their career before I was born that he watched them do. So those were the cool things. It became a father-son thing, and it still is today. My father passed away in December of 2020, but I promise you, it's still a father-son thing. Every time I'm at a show, every time I'm walking, if I'm talking to an athlete, if I'm talking to a fellow collector, in the back of my mind is what he taught me to do and how to talk to them. So I want to tell everybody a little bit more about my background. So I went to college, majored in business administration, left college, worked for a while, worked at different companies. I learned different things about business. That's it. I went back to school, got an MBA in strategy and marketing, and then launched a career in sales, where I sold for an industrial supply company and a CPG company for 13 years. Throughout that time, still collecting, still really dedicated to the hobby and using my career to kind of flourish the hobby. And like now we have studies that show that my generation has kind of grown up with cards, and now we kind of, use past investments to further invest in the hobby. In the last show, prepping for the national, I gave more of my insight about where I see the hobby going, what are some things that's going on right now in the market, and I'll be bringing more of that to Rollin with FD. I think when this channel started, I jumped into getting into shows, talking to people, kind of like my sales background, buying cars and talking about collecting and things like that. But there'll be more things that we talk about concerning how to evaluate cars. When you're at a show, what do you do to understand what a car is worth? You got 130 point out there, you have other resources. You also have market movers out there by Jeff Wilson that will let you know what a car is worth so that you're in the market. I walked a show recently where someone was selling cars and a car was valued at about $350 and they wanted $600 for the car. Now, if you don't step back, you don't know there's a $250 gap there, and it could be more than that if you can negotiate. You may even get that car down to $300 or $275. Those are more of the things that we'll talk about as we go forward. Let's keep walking and enjoy the stadium. Another thing I want people to know is that I love Chicago, Illinois. I'm a Cubs fan, that's why we're here. I'm a Sox fan, that's why we went there. I'm also a Bulls fan. Any sport in Chicago, I'm a fan of, no matter where I live. I mean, I lived in Detroit before. Went to a lot of Detroit Tiger games. Not a Detroit Tiger fan per se. But that's when Justin Verlander was good, and it was good to just see him pitch and see history. So I'm all about that. But just know, all Chicago, always. Crazy, man. You come here and kick back, man. I love this. I love what they've done to the stadium. So today we wanted to take you on kind of a mini tour of Chicago to some of the teams that I've loved watching while I was growing up. The Chicago White Sox, Chicago Cubs, and right now we're at the United Center, the home of the Chicago Bulls, the house that MJ built. I just wanted to really tell you more about me. We have received some comments, people asking, hey, tell us a little bit more about yourself. We want to know more about you. I hope I've covered a lot here. If not, send me a comment, send me a DM on Rollin with FD on Instagram, and we will answer any questions that you have, just to let you know a little bit more about me. G and I want to say thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notifications. Let us know what you think of our content. Let us know if there are things that you would like to see that you haven't seen yet, and we will bring them to you. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great day. And right now, I'm in Chicago, Illinois, loving every bit of it. Boom! Rest in peace, Vodka. Get a little view of that. While we're trying to